And we as tech guys would love new gear to play with. But to be honest, we also need to be good stewards. We need to value engineer some of these solutions a little bit better, because we can spend that money somewhere else a little bit better. Because God knows I'd love to sit in a room and mix.
Yeah.
You know, isolated somewhere, it'd be a blast. But it's not always a solution.
Yeah.
And everything else on your list is way higher than just going to get a new console and a new engineer.
Yep. So you might not need a broadcast console.
People think of it as like a studio position.
Yeah.
Most people have a hard enough time finding a front of house guy.
Yeah. Most people have a hard time finding a person to mix 2 channels left and right correctly, much less monitor engineer
100%.
or broadcast engineer.
Yeah.
Well, and the amount of money it takes to actually get systems set up in a way that it's done right and set people up for success. That's the problem too. Is so many like, well, we need to broadcast. So here's a couple $100. Go do it. So, well, that's kind of set up for failure.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot of things to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
So
Phil's got thoughts.
So here's our second episode of the podcast in this format, and I'm excited about it. I think, the guys have done a great job of making our little studio happen, and it's fun. We haven't done video on the MxU podcast for 160 some episodes.
And we've had a lot of attractive people on the podcast.
We're gonna have them all back.
Well, that's why Phil's here.
Well, I think it's the hair. It's really, it's that flowing mane.
I'll shave it off next time and we can compare, right?
Okay, that'd be great.
We should have opened up with Corey.
There you go.
Well, that's true. We'd had to buy extra moisturizer though. Well, we're joined today by Phil Bledsoe. Phil is the front house engineer for Sam Hunt. I blanked there for a second. But Phil's been around MxU as a friend for a long time, lives here in Knoxville when he's not on the road. And so we're really glad to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
we finished up a tour about a month ago, and then we just ran out to California and did a couple shows, a couple of festivals, and we'll be starting another summer tour in about another month. So
what does that look like? It's a totally different setup, different set, different songs, different everything. So how much rehearsal and what's the process?
We ran last summer doing amphitheaters, and it worked out so well they added an arena run to it. So it was the same tour branding, same set, same everything. But this is a completely different tour, all new design, all new set list. So it's gonna be really exciting. I think everyone from the band to the crew is just excited about what the new stuff's going to be.
So for Sam, coming into a season like that, how much rehearsal goes into that? Is it like a month, 2 weeks, a week? Like, is to get him comfortable and to get everybody kind of in the groove? What does that look
actually, this one's only going to be about 3 or 4 days. So
oh wow,
yeah, it'll be 3 or 4 days, and then the gear will actually run out to our first show in Bend, and we'll I think we load in a day early. Well, half the crew loads in a day early and starts doing a lot of testing and seeing a lot of that stuff in its full scale. Core crew and band will go to somewhere in California, I think, and do a one-off as the rest of the crew's getting ready in Bend. And then we'll fly to Bend and start the tour. Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know Bend was a booming metropolis for country music.
It's just the start of the amphitheater run, period.
Oh, gotcha.
So, I mean, all those Western amphitheaters are just so nice. And
especially this time of year. I mean, there's no better experience than springtime in the Northwest.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool.
Yeah.
All those folks listening in Bend, go see Phil.
That's right.
And next time we're in Gulf Shores in July, just stay home.
Stay home.
That was pretty painful.
It's like walking outside into a wet electric blanket.
That's right.
It's just like, it's just on high. And you're just, walk outside, just come back in, get a shower. Walk out, come back in and shower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, Spencer's with us too. So for those of you who missed our first episode in this format, Spencer is the CEO of MxU, keeps things running around this place, handles all the kind of day-to-day and managing the team here.
Making sure you show up to work.
Yeah, making sure I get here on time from 3 hours away. But what's new with you?
Nothing much besides surpassing the Great Depression of living in East Tennessee in the wintertime. So now we're okay. Do you get a little bit sad in the wintertime here, Phil? No?
No, because whatever hits us only stays around for a couple days. You can always look forward to it moving on.
I feel like it's the December, January, February kind of lull. But anyways, we're through that.
That's just because you can't be on the lake, though.
100%. So now I'm making up for lost time out on the lake, swimming in 70-degree water. It's not too bad. So yeah, man, we're trying to enjoy the outside as a family. We're about to have a baby next month, so we're kind of gearing up for the storm.
Yeah, so that's going around MxU. Mm-hmm. You know, it's what happens when you hire a bunch of kids. We had
Bunch of kids.
well, we've had like 4 babies coming this
4
spring.
babies.
So
we'll be the Olivia and mine will
be
our
the third.
Will be our third, and that's the third in the company. And then we've got one more coming, Josh and Leela. Josh is on our development team, and he's going to have his second.
Yeah, so Nate, our social media guy, and Marcus, our creative director, you and Josh are all having babies within literally 3 months of each other.
Yeah.
So
we've been sitting here troubleshooting audio issues, and I just realized Marcus is low on sleep because he has a newborn. That's why. I'm not throwing you under the bus. It was our fault.
That's right. Could be an XLR, could be a baby that needs a bottle. I'm
Exactly.
not sure.
Could be firmware.
Could be firmware.
It's firmware. It's firmware. That's what he said. It's firmware.
It's definitely a firmware problem.
Moving on.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about today, and I think it's cool that we can kind of bounce things off you as a fellow sort of engineer out there in the world, but you're a church guy too. And so we thought we would introduce kind of a new segment around MxU. You know, we did turn down for MxU for a long time. So now we're kind of turning up for MxU. We're actually seeking people who want feedback on their mixes. So they're going to send us their, whether it's a broadcast mix or just a board mix from front of house, however they have it set up. And we're just going to listen for a few minutes and kind of make some comments.
So you can roast them.
No, so this isn't to tear anybody down. This is just to
Where's Tom Brady?
pick out some things, that we like, and maybe some things that could use improvement.
Yeah.
But to kind of be encouraging, not super critical. Yeah. But so, who knows? I mean, we may play somebody someday, and it sounds like crap, and we'll just have to tell them.
I dread that day. That would be a tough one.
But I don't think we have to do that today. So this is the first thing we're going to listen to today is from our friend Daniel. He's a part of the MxU community, and he volunteered to let us kind of dissect what's going on. So I think this is a mix that's actually coming from his front of house desk.
Okay.
So it's not from a separate broadcast suite. It's kind of coming off, straight from front of house.
Sweet.
Maybe, I don't know if he's probably adding some crowds as a kind of post-fader aux kind of thing, audience mics that aren't going to the PA, but they're going to this send. So we'll see. But let's just take a listen and see what he's doing.
Bro, that sounds baller.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we like about it.
Phil?
Personally, I like the low end. I mean, that's the thing that most people skimp on when it comes to broadcast mixes for sure. I mean, some people make the choice to stay out of that, so it's not going to mess up your TV speakers or your computer speakers. But a lot of times, especially when you put those cans on in a room and you're feeling the energy in the room, you're missing the fact that a lot of that low end's not going to your broadcast. Yeah. So the bass guitar, I love that root just sitting down there.
Yeah, that's good.
I feel like I was in for a front of house mix. I feel like I was there. It feels
there
like
were a lot of
very
crowds.
intentionally
I think
mixed for broadcast.
The audience mics were definitely up in the mix, which I like.
Yeah,
and I think that might be some of where that low end comes from is just the sound of the subs in the room. Even if they're high pass filtered, you still get some of that feeling of that kind of woof in the room from those crowd mics. I thought it was really good. I think, it may be that, I don't know, I'd like to listen to more of it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure about the position of the lead vocal. Like, I feel like it's a party and there's this gang thing happening, which is cool. I wonder if there's enough kind of vocal presence in another song or in the verse. I mean, that'd be my only thing.
Like maybe he was just off the mic and
which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
And then, but I did like the way kind of the band came up around the vocals. It felt like a party.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Well done, Daniel. Thanks for submitting. And if any of you listeners want to, have, who knows who will be on the next episode to critique. Maybe we'll have, I don't know, Chris Lord Algae or somebody. That would be kind of fun.
That would be fun.
But yeah, submit to support at getmxu.com, or if you're in our tribe Slack, post in there. That'd be pretty killer.
Yeah. And don't worry, it's not going to be too painful. We're not going to turn.
Hey, I feel
to
like you were
shreds.
pretty nice.
We could be mean if we wanted to be.
Yeah, that's not the point.
But we're not going to.
That's not the
It's
point.
not going to happen. So, part of the reason Phil is here is because we've been filming some content for the platform, and we've done a bunch of videos all about effects.
Mm-hmm.
So I think effects is something that has impact in a board mix for sure, but in live sound in general, I think we need to give people some insight into how you think about effects for live sound in a way that might be different from a record or different from something that you hear on the radio. Because I think there is a bit of a different approach for reverb and delay, especially in live sound, that you might not always hear on a record.
Yeah. One of my favorite phrases that I use from Dave Rad is just something like, what we do is vanishing energy when we're mixing live. So in the studio, you can sit there with a vocal take or a drum take or something like that, and you can just go over and over and over and clean it up. You can put it back on the shelf. You can pull it down next week and polish it.
Yeah.
And just keep going and going and going.
It's never really finished.
But what we do in our world is just vanishing energy. It comes in and goes out. And because of that, we're also going to be picking up a lot of imperfections. We're going to be picking up tired players and tired singers and stuff like that. And I really feel like, we mentioned in some of the videos that the effects can cover a multitude of sins.
Yeah.
And in this case, bringing effects into it can really help cover up some of that tiredness and some of those missed cues and some of those moments. It also brings people into the space that they're at. So like a lot of times you have a singer singing into a vocal and it's just this dry process thing going straight through, but that person is in a live space.
Yeah.
And yes, when that vocal comes through the speakers and bounces around the space and reverberates and comes back, you're going to get this space. But what we can do is put reverb into that as well to recreate what that vocal would probably sound like if it weren't amplified.
Yeah. It's really an enhancement at that point.
That's right.
It's
yeah.
bringing some extra sparkle, extra body, extra life to an otherwise, especially if they're singing on a, SM58 that doesn't have a whole lot of character.
Right.
It helps bring some presence and sparkle in a way that might not otherwise be there.
Yeah. Yeah. We certainly can't hide from the tools that are in front of us. A lot of people are just really scared to use them or really scared to play with those parameters, but honestly, there's a wide open toolkit, especially on today's technology, that lets us recreate and add to it,
Yeah. One thing that came to me from the videos that you did was when you talked about, like, as a beginner, especially, like, turn that knob, like, get your shoulder into it. Yeah. Like, really overdo it in a way so you can understand the parameters of individual kind of presets within whether it's a plug-in or an onboard effect or an outboard effect. You can understand what diffusion is, understand what room size does, understand what pre-delay does, those kinds of things, and overdo it so that you understand, oh, okay, that's too much. Now I can back it off to what might be a pleasing result. I mean, that's kind of how I learned a lot of things about audio back in the day, was just turn knobs and see what it does.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
can you imagine if you had what Phil just spent, a few hours doing? Like if you had that training available to you?
Yeah, totally.
How did you guys even, back days, Jeff, how would you learn?
Back in the day.
back in the day, how would you even learn something like, feedback knob on effects or something on a reverb?
Yeah, there was no gosh, I mean, there was barely an internet.
Mm-hmm.
There was no YouTube. There was no online resource. It was either a manual where some scientist was trying to describe to you how this thing was supposed to work, and you have to translate a wiring diagram into what you're hearing, which for me is no good. Like I want to hear it. I want to experience it. So it literally was just turn the knobs and see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I don't know about you, but it was like, okay, this is set to 1 second. What happens if I turn it to 4 seconds? What happens if it's just as high as it'll go?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's weird. Let's turn it back down. I mean, that's really, it was just trial and error.
Yeah, that's exactly how I started, because I'm lucky to say that a lot of my early career was in the transition between analog and digital.
Yeah.
So mid to late 90s across into the 2000s, where you could play an analog show one day and a digital show the next day, and applying completely different actions to what you're trying to do. But there was no resources, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I do encourage people when I'm helping them to just dig in and turn those knobs and figure it out.
Yeah.
Also makes it hard to explain later in life when you're kind of like, oh, I know what it's doing because I've trial and errored this all, for 20 something years.
A lot of circular definitions.
Yeah, right. You go back and go, all right, that guy said that. That must be what that thing has done my whole career, and I just didn't realize it. But playing with that stuff, I mean, that's why I'll get on a soapbox, because that's why like presets and plugins drive me crazy when people don't actually understand what's happening behind it. They won't turn the knobs and they won't just play with it and find something that's their own sound. They'll just go drop a preset in and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think presets can be a good kind of starting point, a jumping off point. If I'm in, I don't know, talking about effects, if I'm in H reverb in waves and I hit the drop down menu, I mean, there are hundreds of presets.
Yeah.
So if one of them says, underwater, it's like, well, I can imagine what that might sound like. So I try that out, and it's maybe dark and kind of real, huge long reverb time or whatever. And it's like, okay, that's an interesting starting point. Whereas if one of them said, bright hall, then I have a feeling for what I'm going to get. But having the wherewithal to kind of start from a preset just based on a little hint like that, but then to still be able to learn what diffusion is, learn what, EQ within an effect like that can do, EQing the return, EQing the send, like how, just experimenting with different ways to process it in a way that you're not locked into just sort of set and forget from a preset. I mean, I think it's a balance for me, but I agree with you. It's like the only way to really know what something is doing is to kind of try to break it and put it back together.
Yeah. And I, like in my situation, I absolutely agree with you, because even if the goal is to cut time on your work, so like even when I'm doing toms, I'll EQ the first tom and then copy that EQ and just paste it on all of them, but then go to the next ones and look for resonant frequencies in the next one. But at least I know all the big steps are done.
Yeah.
And so, like to your point on presets on effects like that, if I know I'm looking for something deep or something, long or whatever, yes, I will go and pull up a preset and then start adjusting. But I've learned by over adjusting and playing with it where I want to go from there.
Yeah.
Also, I've learned what I want to get out of something. I know how to look for that preset that gets me closer to it. You know? So
I think with everything, you develop kind of a library of sounds in your head. You know what XYZ snare drum from whatever record sounds like. And so you have a picture in your head of how you want that to be reproduced and what you think you can achieve from this snare drum you're working with today. So okay, there's this knockiness, there's this sheen, there's this thuddiness, whatever it is that you just have sort of in the Rolodex of sounds that are in your head. And if that's what you're going for, you've developed over years ways to get there. I think too many times, when I encourage people today who are just starting out, it's like, what advice would you give to start to develop that kind of library? Because I think for me, that's one of the things that served me the best over the years is, and it only comes from reps. It's just doing it over and over and over and over again. Listening critically, trying to replicate, listening critically, trying to replicate. Ooh, that's it. Let me store that one in my hard drive, right? So how do you go about that?
It's the same. I mean, it's listening and trying to replicate, and then going that next step and making it mine, whatever that thing is, because at some point people hire you for what you're doing behind the console.
Yeah.
I mean, if everyone was trying to replicate all the big guys, I mean, and using their presets and their drop downs, I mean, everything would sound the same.
Yeah.
Except for it wouldn't sound the same because
Right,
you don't
because
have the same mics, the same gain structure,
mic, the same drum,
like,
yeah, exactly.
That is what's interesting to me is how many people I see just will go pull up something really quick and not make it their own and make it special,
Or people who try to sell those presets.
That's right.
Guaranteeing results that they can't deliver on because there's no way it's the same mic on the same drum in the same space at the same day. It's it's going to be different.
Yeah. I mean, we've done those shows, you and I both, I'm sure all of us have done those shows where someone walks up afterwards and goes, "It sounded great. Can I have that file?" And I'm like, "No, because you're not going to have any of this. You're not going to have the mics. You're not going to have this backline drum kit. You're not going to do the right gain structure. I mean, it's not going to work the same."
Yeah, I remember. Sorry. I remember one of the very first guys who did programming and plugins for Waves. I read an interview with him once, and he was just talking about sound in general and live sound. And he said, the biggest thing is, guys, you got to put the right mic in the right place, turn the knob till it sounds good, and stop.
That's right.
Most people don't do the last part.
That's right.
Most people don't know when to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the idea of mix, don't engineer. Like when you're in a service, it can be so easy to just get heads down into, man, I got to fix my reverb. And it's and you miss the guitar solo or you miss person singing in the second verse.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no one walks out humming the kick drum. So let's make sure that the most important thing is the most heard thing.
Who said that? No one hums. Do you say that often?
I've said it before, but I feel like I'm quoting Scoville, but I don't know if it came from him or not. I think it's not mine. That's the one thing I didn't invent. But yeah, I've heard that before, and I say it a lot. This is true. I mean, too many times, especially young people when they're starting out, kick is input one on your pass sheet, so you start there, and you build your mix on the kick drum, and the whole time you want to still be able to hear that kick drum. So I've heard dozens of mixes over time where it's like, oh, this thing was built around the kick. Man, kick solo is awesome tonight.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
And the worst part is you get 38 inputs down the line and you got to find a place to put those vocals.
That's right.
There's no space.
That's right. A lot of times I'll just wipe the whole mix and start with the vocals after I feel like I've got to a good spot because I'm like, this is compounding interest. I'm running out of real estate here.
Yeah.
I mean, Spencer, you don't know this, but you've been the source of this moment for me a couple of times when I'm mixing in church. If I look over and see you, I'm like, oh, he's listening to the snare, and
I probably was
push it up or whatever, and then I just have to remind myself, I'm like, man, everybody else just needs to sing along right now.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure I don't lose the focus on what's happening.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I'm pumped. Tomorrow we're releasing the course, Basic Effects. Was it 5-6 videos or so?
Something like that.
And yeah, I think it's going to help a lot of people. I as I was listening to you, it's like, yeah, even for myself, and I haven't been on this earth that long. Man, I wish I had this long ago. So, tomorrow, if you're listening to this, go check it out. We'll be sending an email. There's a link in the show notes as well, so folks can go get a little free teaser of what is available there. If you're a part of the MxU community and you're subscribed to MxU, log in. It'll be the first thing you see, but I think we should maybe watch a little teaser right now.
Yeah, that's great.
Austin, can you pull it up?
Hey guys, it's Phil Bledsoe. We're here at MxU HQ and we're talking about effects. We're talking about reverb and delay and all the parameters that you're going to need to know about to use those to help bring your mix together in a more cohesive way. Can't wait for you to check it out.
Well, that was great. You did a great job. I think you're a good teacher, and I love just the simplicity with which you communicate profound ideas. So thanks for being here and doing that.
Yeah.
I do want to talk for a little while though about, we listened to Daniel's board mix earlier, and just the idea of kind of broadcast mixing in general. Because I think some people, I don't know, there's just such a wide variety. Even we've talked to churches a lot lately who have just a huge spectrum of what they're doing in terms of creating a broadcast mix, whether it's being broadcast out into a hallway or a nursing mother's room, or whether it's going to the web, or whether it's a separate studio that's creating a whole like extra experience with a different console and all that's going to their live stream. There's just so many ways to think about broadcast mix. You know, we've talked a lot at our MxU Pop-Ups this year so far about broadcast from the video side, but we haven't really dug into the audio. So let's talk for a few minutes about just your thoughts on, you know, broadcast mixing in general. Do we need another console? Do we need a studio? What to think about in terms of building a mix? How do you translate what's in the room to what's going through a computer speaker or an AirPod? Just, I know you got a little bit of a soapbox on this, so
I was
let's
gonna say, this is your
dig
moment,
in,
bro.
yeah.
You've been waiting for this time.
Well, before broadcast really came into the picture several years ago, you know, we would sit with larger churches that would say, you know, we need a monitor engineer. We really need a monitor engineer. And I would always kind of under my breath say, it's hard enough for you to find somebody to mix 2 channels left and right correctly. How are you going to find someone that can handle, you know, 10 stereo mixes correctly?
Yeah.
And so the same opinion applies about broadcast as well, because broadcast is an even more under a microscope sometimes than the live mix is. And, you know, it's really difficult for a lot of churches to find that good audio guy, period.
Yeah.
And so to multiply that by 2 seems really difficult to me. But that allows us to come up with all kinds of different ideas based on what your console is and if you've got buses to do it correctly. But for a lot of times, we really suggest building out bus mixing instead of mixing to another console or just taking left and right. Because let's be honest, we know that if it was just a left and right mix and someone sitting at home watching, as soon as a pastor comes on or the welcome moment, as soon as a spoken word comes on, the volume drops dramatically.
Yeah.
So we know we need to fix a lot of those variances for sure. Also, we know that things like drums that may be loud in the room may not be so present on broadcast, or maybe vice versa. So that's why we talk about bus mixing, is we can create things as packages. We'll call them buses. I call them packages sometimes, where you send everything to a drum mix and you package that really nicely, make it really nice and clean. Everything go into that mix, kick, snare, hat, toms, overhead, go to a drum bus or package. Then guitar, keys, tracks, all those things have their individual packages. All those route to the master bus at Unity because you're mixing in the room to those things.
Yep.
However, for your broadcast mix, you're going to send them at relative levels. So drum bus may be lower, maybe like if you're having to mix it quieter in the room, you may want more presence on your broadcast. If you're slamming the room and having a good time, maybe that's a little too hot on the broadcast mix. All your what we call speakers or media is usually at 0 or +3 on the way to the broadcast mix, and all band is usually like -3, -6.
Yeah.
It just makes this uniform thing across the
There's
board.
about a 10 dB difference between hosting, speech, that bus versus the music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why, if we're backing up for a second, why do you think so many churches, why are they feeling the pressure to mix broadcast separately? Like, I'm always so curious. I ask them all the time, like, why? Is it just because you saw so-and-so on Instagram doing it? Is it because this is the way it's done in the professional world? Like, because there's even tours that, I mean, I've heard mixes from tours, secular tours, where it's like that could be good enough for broadcast mix coming off the desk.
Yeah.
But yeah, why do you think that's the case?
I think it's just a case of one of your points is just seeing other people doing it.
Yeah.
And assuming that it's something that they need to do as well.
Or that if they did it, it would automatically be better.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I think that's the assumption that gets a little fuzzy sometimes is, you know, just because you have the resources doesn't guarantee you a better result. And I think for people who don't have the resources, they shouldn't feel like they can't get good results just from coming off the front of house console.
Well, and it's way easier to throw money at a problem than actually solve the problem.
Yeah, but I think it creates more problems sometimes
Exactly.
because that broadcast mix will live in perpetuity.
Yep.
If you stream it or send it to Vimeo or something like that, other people will see it and other people will not know the context of your live mix.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not done with like relative mixing via buses or things like that, they're going to assume that it sounded that bad in the room if there were mistakes. You know, if they're going to assume that there was a 10 dB variance in the speaker. They're going to, lots of things is going to live there in print forever. And it's
and worse, it was only going to 14 people.
That's right.
In the first place.
Yeah.
Right. They don't have this massive online audience. It's really just for a few shut-ins and somebody's grandma that can't make it to church.
Yeah.
And it's there forever. So
there's so many times we'll go to check on a mix in the middle of service or something, and I'll just log into YouTube or wherever it's streaming and go, oh, there's like 14 people logged in right now. And I want it to be great for those 14 people.
Yeah.
But we're not reaching the masses right now. You know, we don't want to sacrifice 2,000 people in the room for 14 people on.
Yeah. So this comes up a lot as I talk to churches every day. I mean, and you'd be surprised, even a church of 200, 300, they're buying broadcast consoles, so I find oftentimes they're like, well, we already got the budget approved. We already purchased it, but we're not getting the results we want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously it can be really easy to say, well, just train your people. But I mean, are there any other answers you would have for somebody who they've purchased the gear, but it's not sounding the way they'd like it to sound? Would you dare say they simplify and take that console out of the chain and put it in a youth room, or like what would you say to them?
Yeah, a version of that. Either keep it, if they're going to keep that console in place as a broadcast mix and maybe even use it as a training purpose for someone else.
Yeah.
Then you at least send buses to that console. You don't make it a standalone
channel for channel,
vanishing energy, but now is going to print. So you can't clean that thing up. It's going to go to YouTube and it'll be streamable forever. And that one thing that you couldn't fix on the fly because you were distracted or something else happened. So that's why I think buses are probably sending a bus to that console or doing it in your console is a little bit better.
Yeah.
Well, there may be people who aren't even aware of the resources they already have.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you told me a story about a guy who had a PreSonus 64S console.
64S, yeah.
And they only used 32 inputs.
Yep.
He was going to buy a new console to mix broadcast. He didn't realize that he could use the other 32 unused
Had
channels
no idea
on
you
his
could
desk.
double patch the console.
Double patch the console and use a tool like UC Metro from PreSonus, where you could actually take that broadcast mix on their interface into you could mix it from home by logging in and basically controlling those extra 32 faders without being in front of the console. I mean, there's a lot of resources like that people just aren't aware of.
Yeah. So when, like, what are the clear markers people should be looking for, in your guys' opinion, of this is maybe the time where it does make sense to implement a broadcast console?
I think if your console at front of house is, if you're actually out of buses or you're out of outputs and you truly need a second console to do anything else, I mean, if you've maxed out that front of house gear, then that's when you definitely need to.
Yeah.
But even at that point, though, I would challenge somebody to go, okay, I want you to record a post fader aux mix, just a 2 mix outside of the PA, and just listen. To go, okay, is what you're sending to the PA? If you just zero your auxes, and maybe so it's post fader, so your faders are actually building the mix. And then you add a couple of audience mics at 0 that aren't going to the PA, but that are going to that recording. And just see what it sounds like. Is there anything you can do in your front of house mix as it is that could make that broadcast send decent? Good. Because if you do go outside and you have to get another console, put it in a different room, have another person, you just have to think about, what does the training of that person look like? Are we having to hire a contractor? Are we having to spend undue time maybe in post and not posting that mix in real time? Or even on the same day, because they have to do so much work to get it right to send it out in the first place. Like there's so many questions. And I'm not saying nobody should ever broadcast from a separate console. I'm just saying before you do, just make sure you're aware of what you're getting into.
Yeah, and you have to wonder too, I mean, this comes up so often, the idea of, are two SQ7s better than just maybe going and purchasing an Avantis or a D-Live? Because a lot of churches are like, well, we have maxed out front of house, and so we need to go buy another SQ7. It's like, or maybe you just need to upgrade your front of house console.
Right.
Like you might, because you might be duplicating the number of consoles, but now you're also duplicating the number of roles you need to fill maybe, you know, in audio and all the other things that come with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, let's not forget that our primary role is to minimize distractions, period. And so, you know, I just went on this whole sales pitch about multiple buses, this complicated, potentially complicated setup. And if we are still talking about the people receiving that broadcast mix, let's make sure that they're not distracted by dips in volumes, by problems in the mix. So let's make sure that they don't turn it on and then kill the service because they're like, the worship's too loud or I can't hear the pastor. So if the only thing that you could do is use two buses and even maybe make it mono if you have to do all music and then all speaking and media, just to make sure when someone is watching that thing on their phone or on their computer or on some streaming app or something, that
the levels are matched.
Yeah. I mean, minimize that distraction as much as possible. The other thing I would say is constantly encourage your guys who are putting that product out to be listening to it critically.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the bigger things, you know.
And not just on headphones.
Yeah.
On computer speakers, on a sound bar.
That's right.
On AirPods, in the car. Like wherever people are going to be listening, make sure to kind of cross-reference those listening experiences for yourself.
That's right.
And, you know, your PA is not the only place you should be listening.
Right. Yeah. I'm lucky in that one of the churches that I mix at streams live. So when the pastor comes on, I literally put my earbuds in and I scrub back and listen to the worship, and you'll see me reach up and make an adjustment to the bus mix to the broadcast
for the next service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if there's closing songs, then I can actually see how that product worked before the next service. But yeah, don't stop learning and don't stop critically listening, for sure.
So for the people in the audience sitting beside you, watching you go check out YouTube during the sermon,
that's right.
It's actually constructive.
That's right.
You're not just playing on your computer.
That's right.
Man, that's cool.
That's good advice.
Well, I before we recorded today, I texted Phil and I had said, hey, do you have a broadcast mix that was coming from front of house that you think is a pretty good representation of what church could sound like? And he sent something actually, which I was grateful for. I thought,
well, I think we should take a listen.
Yeah, it was very much so a loaded question too, because I don't even think I told you what it was about.
What we were talking about.
You know, the hope is, I think some churches just don't even think this is possible. I think what you're describing, Phil, and some of the technicalities of your process, they might think, no, there's no way that I can actually do that. Or they think my room is too riddled with issues. Like it has to be completely separate process, separate console. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to listen to a service. You mixed a service recently?
Easter. Yeah.
Easter. Tell us about, just so people have some context over the room, what console were you using, and just a little bit so they understand what they're listening to.
Yeah, this was on a Midas Pro X. This room is one that we've been into pretty frequently. It's a pretty difficult room to just kind of just get dialed in depending on how many people are there.
Yeah.
So when it's full, it's great. Lots of energy and all this kind of stuff. When it's not, tons of reflections and reverberations and stuff. So I'm doing that earbud thing almost every service, just kind of going, well, how did this one translate?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is all that complicated bus mixing. We have a different matrix that's the broadcast mix. So every one of those buses, drums, all those things I mentioned earlier, they go to that broadcast mix at different relative levels. So -3, -4. Sometimes it's just a little dB and a half that's different, that lets it fit online a little bit better. I think the one we're going to watch is one of the later services when the room's pretty empty. So
okay.
maybe I got tired of listening. I don't know.
Let's take a listen.
Sweet, yeah, Austin, pull it up for us.
I tried with all my might, but I just can't win the fight. I'm slowly drifting, a vagabond. Just when I ran down the road, I met a man I didn't know, and he told me that I was not alone. We sing in this place today. He picks me up. He picks me up. He turned me around. He placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master. I thank the Savior, because He healed my heart. He changed my name. Forever free. I'm not the same. I thank the Master. I we shout it out today. I thank we thank you.
First of all, it sounds incredible, but I'm so curious to know right away, because I know how you are. You're probably thinking of the 100 things that need to change.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just be curious to know what's going through your head after listening back to that.
Well, I'm missing the low end that we had in Daniel's earlier. What's the right name?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
I'm missing the low end that we had in that for sure. But that's one of those challenges of putting on cans live and just trying to see how that translates. Cause that room's got it's got flown subs and floor subs, a lot of low end energy that is or is not making it in front of house at different parts.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What did you think, Jeff?
I thought it was great. I like the presence of the vocal. I love the little girl down front in the front row who's just kind of jumping around, going for it. She's excited.
Yeah, that was
so
cool.
obviously it felt great in the room. I like the sound of the drums. I mean, it sounded live, which is great. Like sometimes you hear a broadcast mix and it sounds like they're trying too much to be in a studio.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I want it to feel like I'm in the room.
Yeah.
And I think that really translated well. The BGVs, everybody, those levels are up and it's exciting. I wonder, the only thing I would be curious about, just for the listener at home, if the lead vocal felt a little dry.
Yeah, for sure.
Because sometimes it's hard to know. Like in the room, you have the sound of the room, and it doesn't sound that way. So I don't know, but I'm not saying everybody should swim their lead vocals in reverb.
That's basically what Phil taught today, actually.
Yeah, honestly, I felt like they were pretty far forward. I mean, I feel like you'd still have plenty of diction if they came back just a little bit.
Yeah.
There are audience mics in that mix. I'm not sure they're timed back to the broadcast feed. So, yeah, I mean,
Talk about timing audience mics back. You don't want to talk about it?
No.
It's a totally separate course.
See a previous MxU course on that.
That's right. Actually, we have a great video on the MxU platform called Audience Mics Can Be Simple. Yeah. And it actually really is great because
It is. I've watched it so many times.
yeah, well, it's based around the idea that you don't want there to be time smear
Yeah.
in your mix, especially if you have mics at front of house that are capturing the sound of the room and mics on the stage pointing out to capture the audience. Yeah. Sound reaches those mics at different time, and that time difference can create what feels like phase problems.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure that if we can, we delay our mix to basically the latest point in time so that all those things can be lined up well. So
Yeah, that's why I shake my head. I can't push that video enough of how many times I've gone back to look for it. So there's no reason I need to repeat it when that video was so good with
Audience
Andrew and
mics.
Jeff.
the late great
Audience mics can be simple.
Audience mics can be
Yeah.
simple. The late great Andrew Stone talks us through
Yeah.
a very simple process for making that dialed in. And that's part of, speaking of Andrew, honestly, that's part of what made his broadcast mix so good because of the way he cared for those audience mics and treated them just incredibly delicately. But his mix was all from front of house.
Yeah.
And it sounded awesome. Like his broadcast mix was on point. So go back to some of those old Church on the Move Seeds conference days and check out those videos because he had it dialed. It was great.
Yeah.
But it was a lot because of those audience mics.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's very interesting.
So I think audience mics, creating those buses, really challenging yourself by listening on different sources, in different environments.
Yeah.
Really, I think for all engineers, like make it kind of a game, make it a challenge to yourself to go, how can I get better at this? Because really MxU is all about us helping each other get better. So, if your only responsibility is front of house, You don't even have a broadcaster at your church. Great.
Yeah.
You can still create and record a post-fader mix, record your board mix, listen to go, okay, this does not sound like what my PA is doing. So is there something wrong with my PA, or can I make my PA sound like this? Because this sounds really good.
Yeah.
So what's the disconnect? You
Yeah.
know, there's always ways we can challenge ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, there's a list, and down that list, somewhere down that list is another console, another engineer. And we as tech guys would love new gear to play with. But to be honest, we also need to be good stewards. We need to value engineer some of these solutions a little bit better, because we can spend that money somewhere else a little bit better. Because God knows I'd love to sit in a room and mix.
Yeah.
You know, isolated somewhere, it'd be a blast. But
Yeah.
it's not always a solution.
Yeah.
And everything else on your list is way higher than just going to get a new console and a new engineer.
Yep. So you might not need a broadcast console.
Maybe not.
That's what we've learned today.
We're about to get shut down.
We're about to get shut down.
Well, hey, we do
man.
have a few MxU pop-ups that are still to come this year.
Yeah.
So make sure to go check out getmxu.com. We have all the dates listed there, and we cannot wait to see you in person. You know, these, as we've said, these are different this year. We're around tables. We're networking with other local churches. We're talking a lot more about team and community and health than we are about how to turn the knob. And so far, it's been really well received. I think these churches who've come have really enjoyed getting to know each other, hanging out, building community, and learning at the same time. We've got great partners who are teaching great content as well, so you're not going to want to miss it. So get your tickets now because they're going fast.
Yep, we're having a good time. And make sure you check out Phil's course tomorrow on effects.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great time.
Phil, thanks so much for being with us
absolutely.
today.
Thank you, guys.
It's always awesome to hang out.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your wisdom.
Thank you.